needs, and it's a pretty straightforward budget as outlined on page 46. I'm here to answer any of your questions.
Any questions, comments from members of council?
My questions
Mr.
are
Biter.
just gonna, sorry,
No, you're good.
I jumped right in there. Contracted services, we see a significant decrease in that. And then just obviously, pretty significant decreases overall, with some other categories, but contracted services specifically, why are we not budgeting for
Because
any of them?
in the year that you're looking at contracted services, we had included CEDACOG as a contracted service for that year. As of last year, we picked them up, paying them through the CDBG budget.
Okay. Yeah, some.
And the other ones were just changes that have on the allocations for other services that were provided to us by the finance office.
Mr. Allison, you had a couple questions.
Yeah. If we go back to the salary detail pages, page 68. Page 68 and 70. At the top of page 68, it's the planning department. And on page 70, then, at the bottom of that page is the rest of the planning. I just wondered why they're separated that in that way. Are they not doing the same thing, or?
If I'm looking at this correctly, Mr. Allison, some of our funding is coming from multiple different sources, and I think that was how this was broken down, if I'm correct,
Okay,
using CDBG, city
right,
general fund dollars, using fair dollars, using RDA dollars, using land bank dollars.
yeah,
So that's a breakdown of how this was all put together. Our totals are what they've always been. I believe mine's around
okay,
66,000, et cetera, for a total number.
okay, yeah, that was my question, as far as, you know, what they were, what that was going for. Related to that, right above that, is, it says information technology included in treasury. The number that it's assigned is 0410. Is that transposed? Should that be 4010?
On page 70, Mr.
Yeah,
Allison,
it's on page 70.
under information technology.
Yeah,
I don't have, I'm not quite sure.
I couldn't find that
It's
anywhere.
not- that's
So,
not us.
That would be CD. That would be for Chris's
Chris.
department, the IT department.
That's not under my office, so.
right,
The one,
but, well,
Yeah,
that's why I wondered, it says included in treasury, which I wasn't sure how that related to that, but I wondered if there's no number assigned to planning there. So my question was that under that?
so the two that you're referring to, the 8003. And
He's talking about the account number.
Yeah, the account number.
so that would be Chris's department.
Okay,
I guess he's saying-
Yeah, but Randy means what's the account number for planning?
Oh, but well, this was just included, this portion of the salary is what's coming from their other funding, from the fair and from the RDA. On page 68 is what's going to be coming from the general fund budget.
okay, I understand that, but the one on page 70 it just seems like it's hanging out there.
He's talking about the account number 0410.
Randy, I think what's going on is it doesn't have an account number because it's not a part of the city's budget. It's part of the community development block grant funding budget. If
Well,
I'm understanding correctly.
then I just wondered then why, okay,
I think it maybe is for informational purposes only, like
Yeah.
that's where the rest of the salaries are coming from, right?
Right, last year we didn't present. Last year we didn't present the community development portion that wasn't charged to the general fund. So we wanted to make sure you understood that those people are employed full time
right,
and that their full salaries are included, but they're not all included in the general fund budget. And they're allocated between the general fund and community development.
okay. All right,
So 68 is the general fund portion.
Right.
It ties to the general fund budget,
Mhm,
but the portion on 70 is going to the community development fund.
okay. And the, I mean, overall, it's the same, but there was, I mean, they were reallocated a little bit from before, but, you know, that's not significant. And
Wanted to make sure that the salary pages included all employees of the city. So when we were just showing you the general fund portion last year, we felt like we didn't want it to be misleading,
okay,
but we were showing you just a portion of their salary. So this year we updated it and included a portion that was being paid in other funds outside of the general.
okay,
So we wanted to show you there were kind of employees, but their salaries were being split.
right. So that's why this is at the tail end then.
That's
So,
correct.
okay, all right,
That what you're seeing in the general fund, but have you understand that those people were full time and they.
Okay. all right. Yeah, that all makes sense now. Okay.
Ms. Mealy.
Two real minor points about that then.
Yeah.
Maybe we should put under account number NA or something like that, just so it doesn't appear to be rolled into the
CDBG.
treasury. Yeah, something like that, something under the account number slot. And also, the second column in the planning included in community development actually adds up to 2.0. And the second column in the planning department, on page 68 actually adds up to 3.0.
Okay.
Real minor math stuff, but I'm just saying there's a difference there then, and we might as well be accurate about it. Or if that wasn't our intention, then we should make the numbers align with whatever the intention was.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The second column in planning and included in community development, the second, the proposed staffing for this year allocated out of community development adds up to 2.0, not 1.9. And in the proposed staffing under planning department, that adds up to 3.0, not 3.1.
The allocations are, we don't.
Right. Got it.
So it's like 1.924.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
gotcha.
Got it. Okay. Is there a reason for I mean, I understood last year that we were splitting a certain amount of everyone's time between the general fund budget and are we simply massaging numbers there? Can I legally say that? Or do we actually feel as though we're now allocating slightly more of their time to community development work than we were last year? Okay. Got it. So. Okay. Understood. And consequently, that's. Actually, this probably is a question for Tracy too, but why are so many numbers in 2023 showing up as substantially over in the personal services for the planning department? Is that because it's the entire allocation of funding? Page 46, sorry. Yeah, maybe that, I thought maybe this was an accounting thing, but it's not. Okay.
We're behind in getting the funds transferred from like RDA and land bank back to the city. We're working through that. It all should be transferred before the end of the.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought that was some sort of a decision made in the finance department, but it actually is. Currently, the department is $171,000 over budget this year, but we'll be reimbursed for all of that
Yes.
at some point. Okay. All right, got it. Thanks. Kim.
Any other comments or questions? Do you have a breakout? So the roughly 3 hours of the, or 3 hours, excuse me, of the three personnel of the five in the office that are funded through the general fund, do you have a breakout of essentially what? So you referenced like supporting the RDA, for example. Do you have a rough idea of?
I do have a breakout. Of
Can you send that
the
over?
amount of time
Yeah,
for each employee as per RDA land bank.
yeah.
Provide that to you.
Because again, part of the conversation Monday when we were talking about the grant manager, or whatever you want to call that position, I think from the administration's point of view, it seems that they're looking to that person to handle both compliance and I think looking at grants. And I think part of the question that we were talking about Monday was, well, I think as we brought community development into the general fund, I think that's part of what we were looking for that office to do. That kind of that high level conceptual, what's out there, grant wise, that kind of stuff. But it seems like that's not the case and not happening. That answer would, I think, kind of explain why that's not happening and how
That to all.
I think our perception and discussion last year and 2 years ago when we started this is probably different compared to what's going on now. So that would be helpful.
Glad to do that to hopefully by the end of this week. Maybe next week.
Any other comment, Ms. Mealy?
Yeah, just one last question then on the overages. If the salaries in this year's budget are allotted strictly between our budget and the community development budget, then I guess I'm not quite understanding, and all the expenses I'm presuming are allotted strictly between our budget and community development. Are we expecting the department to be significantly under budget when we finish doing work for the RDA and the land bank, or are we no longer doing that in 2024?
Doing RDA, where all the same funding sources that we used this year, we will be using next year and hopefully the year going forward.
Will people in your department be working overtime? I guess that's what I'm not understanding is if I've got 4/10 of a person working on the city's dime and 6/10 of a person working on community development, then how do we have $87,000 worth of salary overages in the, do you see what I'm saying? That are being compensated by the RDA?
So 2023, the actual estimated total salary for the department in the general fund is $241,000. Next year, it's going to be $161,000.
Right.
So this year, were we working overtime? Like what's the discrepancy
Mhm.
is what she's asking. So why the drop off?
Well,
Is that right?
What I'm asking is we budgeted 171,000 in 2023 for salaries out of the
Correct.
general fund. We've apparently spent 241,000.
That's part, we have to reimburse the city. They covered our salaries and we're reimbursing them for those numbers that all equalize as soon as.
Well,
all the
okay.
checks come.
So we've done more scope than what we've budgeted last year, is what you're saying.
Actually, the scope is the same. It's just the fact that we are behind in getting the allocations from the redevelopment authority and land bank and CDBG and home reimbursing the city.
Well, the reimbursement shouldn't have anything to do with that. If we budgeted 171.5, regardless of how, if 50% of that time is going towards RDA, that I would think that shouldn't reflect, and Tracy pop up here and correct me if I'm wrong, but that should not reflect as an overage on what we budgeted. I think they're two different things, right? So I guess.
It sounds as though what Skip's saying is that they're being paid exclusively out of this general fund budget. And then they're billing back to community development.
Correct.
But I guess I'm confused. Where does the RDA fall in there? Because I'm not, if we're breaking out salaries in two different places in the salary detail, I'm not seeing a place where it says this
Yeah.
is the money that we're intending to get from the RDA for salary.
I send you those time sheets, you'll actually see how the time has been allocated to RDA, to land bank. by Allen.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is right now, the time that you're putting in with RDA is included in the community development chunk
Yes.
of the salary detail? Okay,
Tracy, please.
So you're talking about two different pieces of the puzzle, right?
Yep.
So
Is that on?
there are funds.
yeah,
Is that on?
is that on? It's not.
There. Hello?
There are
Thank
funds within the city that reimburse the general fund for wages, right? So community development and home are funds of the city. And so when they make the reimbursement to the general fund, it reduces the salary and benefits that are budgeted in the general fund.
Mhm.
Then you have the RDA, Land Bank and Fair, which are not the city.
Right.
So those go into revenue, right? They don't reduce the expense. They go into revenue and they were part of your revenue budget. So there's
Okay.
two different pieces here.
So,
So those, the wages and salaries that are attributable to general fund, fair, RDA and land bank all show as expense in the general fund. And then you show revenue
Right.
that reimburses for it. But CDBG and home, because they're part of the city, that reduces the expense that is being budgeted in the general fund.
got it. So then what you were saying is the 241,000, the difference between the 171 and the 241, that 87,340 on page 46 is all home and CDBG
Correct.
funds, not RDA. and land
Correct.
bank. Okay, all right. Now I understand.
They're
Thank
behind
you.
on drawing down the funds from
Okay.
CDBG and home to reimburse the general fund at
Right,
this point.
that's fine. I was just confused when we brought the RDA and the land bank into it as to where that money was
Right.
showing is in and out. Okay.
Two
all right.
different treatments,
Got it.
and that's only because you're dealing within the city and then outside the
Okay.
city.
Yeah, for the record, I would be very interested to see what the reimbursement of the RDA is and how it's breaking out in terms of time versus materials, et cetera, just because I'm curious what we're doing for them and what we're charging them for it, you know what I mean? But that's, but I just didn't see it within this budget, and that explains why, because it is
Right.
not, yeah, okay, understood. Thank you.
Mr. Allison.
Skip just one quick one. The software line item, it was budgeted for, but apparently not spent. And so it's in next 2024's budget. What kind of software
Something like a QuickBooks or something along those lines for our finance person right now, the software that they were using
Mhm.
before I got here is so outdated and antiquated. There is no support for it anymore. So in consultation with our finance director, we're going to look to bring in another software package to use for the CDBG and home program,
Okay,
and then possibly for the redevelopment land bank programs also.
okay, well, that sounds like it's pretty important. I would think that,
We hope to have it by the beginning of the year, no later than the beginning of the second quarter.
okay, great, thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Skip one more. Where are we at with the agreement between the RDA, land
They
bank
are
and us?
completed and have been finalized and signed and submitted.
We never voted on those, did we? I don't remember voting on those. We should approve those, correct?
Okay. It seemed that we didn't, because the money had been allocated, that all we had to do was complete the subrecipient agreements. And we, in consultation with UHR, the consultant for
UHY,
the
yeah.
city. They
Okay.
gave us the directions on how to
Okay.
get those completed.
Okay, no, if we don't legally need to, then that's fine. I was of the impression for the better part of this year, even from talking to you, that we.
Originally, I
expect to vote.
thought that was going to be it, but after discussing it with them, They gave us direction as to how to proceed from there,
Okay,
given what you had already done.
okay. If we're free and clear and good legally, then like what, that's perfectly fine. I was getting nervous hearing about doing work, getting reimbursed and not having an agreement in place, but if we don't need one, then that's fine. I mean, it would be good to get that documented by our solicitors. And I-
It was passed through Austin and he signed off on it.
Can
It
you
would-
forward me the documentation for that, please?
Yes, sir.
So that we have it. Thank you. Ms. Mealy.
One last question, and I swear I think I'll understand this. Where is the income from from the RDA showing up in the budget?
I'll punt that one to someone
Yeah,
else.
yeah. I understand that. I didn't remember it as a line when we did the budget last year because we didn't know that it was coming. Yeah, there's a miscellaneous income CD.
Yeah.
That's, okay. So that's, but is it going into community development or is it going into planning? Into the general fund, right? Yeah, got it. Okay, so, but so it's, I guess, from an administrative perspective, are we regarding the department as community development when it's funded by community development block grant funding and as planning when it's funded by the general fund? Or are we always calling it community development? We're calling it planning in the salary detail. That's why I'm asking.
Right.
Okay.
That's what is the general fund.
Got
And
it.
then the community development at home, direct and administrative and program pieces are in community development and planning fund.
Got it. So, but so this funding is going directly into the general fund. It's not going in somehow into community development.
That is correct.
Okay. And it's not coming from community development either. It's coming from,
No,
right?
community development at home nets down the salaries and benefits that are being paid out.
Mhm. So then the total amount coming out of the general fund for community development this year is actually about $200,000. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to wrap my head around all the numbers so that when I'm asked what we're spending for the department, I know. Okay.
So the proposed budget for community development is $337,000. But you'll be reimbursed, the budget.
Right.
for Reimbursement for fair, home and land bank is. $130,000.
Okay.
The net of those two, so about $200,000.
Got it. So 207, right? Okay. And you said, wait, we don't get home reimbursements direct into the general fund, right? Home reimbursements.
Net down the expense of wages, so it's reducing its direct.
Right. Okay, but it's not them reducing this number on 46 directly,
Yes.
even though we're also paying a portion of the salaries directly out of the.
So
Sorry.
page 46 represents full salary,
Mhm.
net of CDBG and home reimbursement.
Got it. Okay. So the net salary take in that department is 161,357 this year?
That's the salary.
Yes. That's net of the planning department, but not of the community development portion on page 70.
Correct. So that is just the portion that is administrative.
Mhm.
Fair. Land bank and RDN.
Okay, so this does not include home and community development.
Only community development shown on page 70.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so this is RDA fair and land bank. Got it.
And general fund. like
Right,
general-
and the general, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, thank you. I now fully understand what we're talking about. Thank you, Tracy, for your time on that one, and I'm sorry for taking up so much time, everyone else. Okay, great.
Any other comments or questions on community development? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Skip. We will move to the Department of Public Safety. Office of the Director and Police are first. Chief Snyder, welcome, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Council, President, Vice President. So I present to you today just the proposal for the Bureau of Police, our fund. So let's see.
28, 29, 30. My apologies,
go ahead.
page number. I forgot.
Yes, we're on 28. The officer and employee breakdown is on page 69, and then capital projects is on page 72.
Does anybody have any questions on the Office of the Director and Bureau of Police budgets? So a question that I have, so I know we after last year, we went from, it was 48 to 51, correct? Is that, are the numbers correct? And we're holding at 51. And I remember part of the conversation being, we wanted to hire a few more. Let's see if it makes a dent on overtime. Roughly, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Am I correct? I think towards the middle to the end of the year is when we were finally able to get those additional members on board. Is that correct?
We got two of the
Got
four.
2 of the 4.
Because
Okay.
we did end up picking up a retirement last year that we weren't
Okay.
expecting, so we had to fill that position. Then the 3 additional that we did, we got 1 of those slots filled, so we still have 2 open. And the
Okay.
backgrounds are happening as we speak right now.
Gotcha. So we don't, my point in saying that is we don't have a good sample size to really judge how are we gonna
Correct.
impact overtime, et cetera. Is it safe to assume that's why we're holding at 51 in next year's budget? Because I know some of the conversations we've had,
Yes,
I think the long-term goal was to increase that, but
yes. So right now, in all fairness, we didn't get a full year with all 4, or excuse me, all 3 officers to see what a true offset would be. So. And, you know, we're coming up with ideas and stuff.
Yep.
Just today, we had a talk with the representative from Pennsylvania State Police that talked about funding a whole nother position with a specially assigned task force officer. So those are conversations that we can have, getting a 50-second position that would be fully funded and reimbursed. So I'll bring that up just because it happened today. I didn't get a chance
Yeah.
to bring it to you guys yet, and but just there's stuff to talk about. So. But yeah,
That's
for overall the 51, that's why we decided to stay on the 51 after conferring with everybody.
gotcha. Thank you for that. I thought that was the case, but I wanted to make sure. And then with the overtime in general, I don't know if this is a question for you, Chief Snyder, or Heather. Do we have a breakdown generally of where that overtime is accumulated? Like, I guess how much of it is additional, like responding to like general calls that we get? How much of it is special events above and beyond? Kind of, do we have any kind of gauge on what that looks like?
To a degree, not necessarily on the types of calls, but we did do a breakdown of all the events that we did this year. Try to do a breakdown of what was reimbursed, what wasn't reimbursed. We would have to tag team doing a breakdown for the total reimbursement for our US Marshals Task Force officers.
Yep.
And SROs. You know, for example, the SROs, I believe it's like 130,000 is what's reimbursed to the city for 2 SROs.
Gotcha.
So it's one thing we're working on. We do have a spreadsheet that we did for the events. So this year we paid out about 50 grand, a little over 50 grand for the events.
Okay.
But some of that was reimbursed. For example, Little League was reimbursed for 20,000.
Are you able to share that?
Yeah, so if you're talking about like, we do, like, Assistant Chief Bull just said, like investigative overtime, we do have those breakdowns that we could share. So you have manpower, investigative, we have all those breakdowns.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of overtime due to just, I think the general nature of the scope of what our police department does, core functionality like
Yes.
investigations,
Yes,
responding to calls, like that's stuff because in my mind,
Yes.
normal.
Would you like
scope
us to
that we-
provide that to you?
Yeah, if you have any info on kind of what that breakdown is between what we do, what we need to do to just do our core functionality, out, special events, that kind of stuff, that would be helpful to help kind of gauge, and especially going into next year, when we're sitting here next year and trying to start thinking, well, is this working? I think understanding that is going to be helpful because I think realistically, you're probably looking at a particular sliver that you're trying to minimize.
Yes.
Is what I'm
But
getting.
also the variables that are in place with it. I just want to make sure we keep in mind, like, for instance, we had several officers that have new families this year.
Yeah.
That's, and then, an instance that we didn't know was going to happen. Now they take off. Those shifts have to be covered. So there's a lot of variables in place like that as well. Some injuries that we incurred. So there's a lot of things that we just don't have control over.
No, understood. That's the nature of having staff members.
Yes.
Absolutely. But yeah, that information will be helpful.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Any other questions from members on the director and police budget? Mr. Allison. and then
I
Mr.
just
Patty.
have one on the salary detail. Get it here. Oh, under the on page 69, the non-uniform services. The records supervisor has that dynamic change there? or
Yes,
something with that?
we had a retirement and then had to refill that this last
Okay.
year, so. And
So
then with them, according to their CBA, their longevity is actually calculated into their salary,
Right,
so.
yeah, I figured it was a part, that
Yes.
2023, there was just a part
Yes,
missing as far as expense, so, okay, thanks.
Mr. Mackey, you had a question?
I was just curious about the vehicle lease purchase line item. Are we planning on buying some new cars this year? And
yes, good question. So we are planning on keeping the cycle going with getting new vehicles. So a couple things in play. We still owe on our 5 years that we leased for the first 4 additional that we did. We are ahead on that, so we're good in that aspect. But we are gonna have to make some new purchases. Our fleet, as we dealt with in the last couple of years, we're trying to catch it up. And we're still in that process of getting our fleet up to where it needs to be. It's much better than where we were, but it's still.
the only reason I ask, and again, I don't have the ARPA budget in front of me. I know that we still have a lot of money hanging out there.
Yes,
While it is technically assigned to something.
Yeah.
Again, I've said this before, does it make sense to continue to sit on this money when we are starting to get close to this deadline?
Mhm.
just to throw it out there, police will take it off.
But.
I'm sure every department would.
No,
take
but
it off.
Hell, if
But-
it's going to waste council, will take it all, but no.
$265,000 seems like an amount of money that is out there somewhere assigned that could be transferred so that we're not. It seems silly to lease a vehicle when we can just purchase them outright in this scenario. So, and again, I don't have the ARPA budget in front of me,
Yeah.
obviously. I don't know
Is
where,
this a lease or a
Well, no,
purchase?
just to clarify, these are actual purchases.
right,
Um,
but if we can knock that, take that out of,
Yeah.
that's $265,000 we can take out of the budget if we just purchase them with ARPA money.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
is.
I'm not disagreeing.
No,
with you,
yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm saying, yeah, we're not wasting our money leasing vehicles, right? That would be it, right? Either
Right.
way, which would be, right?
Yeah, I think as we go through the voting, the votes on the budget, and I think as we make changes, I think.
Yeah.
A big part of that, at least for me, and I think for a number of us, from what we've been kind of chatting about here this week. Is going to be having that in the back of our head, because, the deadline to allocate, when we say allocate, it's have it budgeted, but then also like at least have a contract mechanism in place.
Right.
Is literally a year from now. And you know, we had a lot of great ideas, but some of them are moving and some of them aren't. And so we're gonna have to make some changes. And so ideas like that are
Yeah,
definitely things
yeah.
we need to look at. And so when we do make some of those changes, you know, I think
Right.
I think it's a good strategy for sure. So anyway,
And could you just remind me again what the communications line item is? 18.5.
That's the
That-
communications?
It's item
Oh,
6.
yes, that's mostly cell phones.
So, okay.
Yes,
And I see the radio maintenance contract. I mean, how are the radios working out?
right.
Good.
So,
Okay.
you know, obviously we were in a bad situation. You guys helped us out with allowing us to purchase radios with ARPA, and it's been a great investment.
Okay. That's it.
Chief, could you do me up, and then Mrs. Katz, could you do us a favor? I guess maybe. Do you have an idea of over the next couple of years, how many additional purchases you would plan? Like in the 2025 budget, 2026 budget, would you continue to try to budget 250 to 300,000 a year for more purchases? Like, or is that kind of where we're at with? getting-
For everything, or are you just talking about radios?
No, for vehicles.
Oh, for
For
vehicles?
vehicles, yes.
Yes, we're trying, yes.
So that over the next couple of years, we can expect that number, roughly.
Roughly that number.
That's
yeah.
what, 3 or 4 vehicles
So
here?
we're looking at 3 vehicles.
3?
And the upfits. So the upfits, obviously with technology,
Yep.
is getting more and more. So there's a significant increase with each vehicle this year compared to last year, almost to the tune of about $10,000 per vehicle. So.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay. Mrs. Katz, sorry.
That's okay. You know, that was one of my questions, if we could possibly have, we used to get the longevity of where you need to in the future, how many cars. You would know by your mileage and wear and tear, and we would get a sheet like that for other departments also. So, you know, we know what we're gonna have to budget for in the future, and it just helps tremendously when you have that information.
Yes, we have that if you would
Okay.
like it.
Yeah, shoot that over.
Yeah, I think that would help tremendously.
Yes.
The other thing the question I have is, contract services. What is that covering?
That's all our contracts, such as our record management system right now.
Is that-
That's our biggest one that
That's
we
the
have
biggest
right now. We're in a transition of going to another one, but until then, we're paying a substantial amount for just that one contract. But then we have a multitude of contracts within the police department with a lot of the software and systems that we are using. So that's what that's for.
Because it really jumped and,
Yes.
you know, just to make sure that we know what we're going with at this point. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Mealy.
Just a quick question, since we're talking about ARPA, do we have an updated budget? Does the existing ARPA budget reflect the final drawdown of funds for this year's budget?
I was thinking that I was going to email you, Heather and Tracy. Could you get us an updated, I guess, budget reflecting kind of where all of our line items are at as far as drawdown, et cetera? Maybe flag some projects that or including you, Derek.
That may not come to fruition.
What projects do we expect to move and fit within the timeline? What ones do we not expect? So we can get a good, I think by the end of the year, idea of next year, what do we got to move around
Right,
and get in line?
Yeah.
So I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
So if,
Yeah,
I don't know
just
how
looking
easy that is
back,
to do,
I
but that
haven't
would be
seen
helpful.
anything much as far as an ARPA budget goes since sometime in June, and I'm assuming that doesn't necessarily reflect the administration's drawdown for this year and
Yeah,
projects that may or may not be.
I think we had one August, September was the last one I remember
Okay.
that we got, but yeah, anyway, that would be helpful, and thank you very much.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions on the Office of the Director or the police, the Bureau of Police, excuse me. Okay. Gentlemen, thank you both very much.
Thank you, President Yoder.
We will move to the Fire Department. Chief Funks, I welcome you, sir. And we are on page 31 and 32. Unless I'm missing another page. 31 and 32. It's right after the police.
Mhm.
Chief, good evening, sir.
Good evening, President Yoder, members of council. Before you is the budget for the fire department. As you'll see, there's a 3% cost increase for the unionized firefighters. And should read 3% for an at-will administrative aide. We're also adding a new position, assistant chief of training. The overtime is going down by 15,000. Pension MMO calculation is going down $35,568. Health insurance, 2023 did not include Medicare reimbursements, HRA contribution. That's gone up 62,142. There was some I guess mess ups on my part with the training and travel. The travel was budgeted for 10,300, and we failed to include the additional two firefighters that we will be hiring next year to replace Kevin Breen, who will be retiring in May, and Chief Lucas, who will be leaving in December. So we'll be hiring a firefighter for the fall academy to replace Breen, one for the fall for Chief Lucas. So we need to transfer some money around and increase that line item a little bit. So we were looking at pulling 5,000 from hydrants and laterals and 3,000 from fire prevention and investigation. And then we would have about just shy of $6,000 that we would need to increase that by. That was for travel. Training, there was a slight decrease to training, $9,800, and then protective clothing. We also failed to include the protective clothing for the two firefighters to replace their gear. So the protective gear, there's also repairs are increasing dramatically. We just changed had a button, or not a button, I'm sorry, but a snap replaced on a pair of turnout pants that ended up costing $250 just to replace a snap. So,
And I guess that's not something we can do in-house.
no, as a matter of fact, Chief Herney's mom, she's certified by NFPA, and to be able to work on the turnout gear, they have to be certified by NFPA. She is, but that's something that's a little bit out of her wheelhouse. So she wasn't able to do that. We had to send it out to a professional company, and that's why it skyrocketed. And we were trying to prepare for this. Chief Herney's mom is going to be retiring at some point. She has been fantastic to work with over the years. She works for the barn fabric. So, so ultimately, with all of these replacements, Chief Herney also oversees the turnout gear replacement plan. And last year, if you remember, when we discussed the ARPA funding to purchase the 35 sets of turnout gear, our plan was to purchase 6 sets of turnout gear a year. Each firefighter has actually 2 sets of gear, 2 complete sets, and that is to have for the front line and for backup that they carry with them in their personal vehicle. Because pretty much 3/4 of the time, if we get an off-duty fire, they'll come in on their personal vehicle to the scene. So we needed to address that. And we would be, if taking all those things into consideration, we would be over budget by, based on the $32,080, we'd be over budget by about just shy of 16,000.
Any comments or questions for the police, or excuse me, fire budget? Mrs. Katz.
I don't have a question about the budget. What I have a question of, the other night, there's a female firefighter.
Correct.
Is this the first one?
No, she's actually the second one. 30 years ago, in August,
30
it would have been
years.
31, actually. 31 years ago, we hired a female. She was one of the first 8 that got laid off in 96. But in June of 96, she had fallen off the truck. Was injured pretty severely and was, she retired on a pension. So,
Okay. I was really happy to see that the other night.
yeah.
It's great.
Yep, and just so you know, little heads up, she did pass her firefighter 1 and firefighter 2 certification today. So
Great.
we're very happy for her.
Good.
Cool. Mr. Mackey and then Mr. Biter.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
Could you just, why do we anticipate going so far over on our contract services?
Contract services. So the contract services, we transferred over our records management system. We haven't transferred yet, but we were switching, as the state was, to a new records management system. We still needed to maintain our previous records management system. So that was one component. Another component was another software system that we had to include in that. So that's why it bumped up, quite considerably.
And that's going to carry over into next year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Biter.
Could you explain a little bit as to what you're envisioning for this new assistant chief of training and what kind of savings we're going to see if we're going to allocate the dollars in salary for that? And then also, is this something that you're looking at promoting within the ranks? Are you looking outside to add this new firefighter to the ranks? How's that going to work
Sure.
from your perspective?
Sure. So this will come from the ranks. We do have a lieutenant who's interested in the position. And that position will be, we have 4 platoons, and each platoon, when they do training, they do something different. There's no consistency in the training, the amount of training they get. So this assistant chief will ensure consistent training. He will also be responsible for some of the reporting that they do on the records management system regarding EMS reports. He'll oversee that. And then basically, he's a younger guy, not real young, but considerably younger than myself. And he's got his finger on the pulse of the current fire culture. And that's another one of our desires, is to have that firefighter or that assistant chief try to make some changes with within the culture of the fire department.
Is there any specific training? Sorry, is there any specific training that he will have to receive to fulfill this role?
No, he's quite trained.
Mr. Pelisi.
Thank you. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
I just have a quick question regarding, well, it would be 76040, third down under equipment repairs. I'm going down through here looking at some figures, and I saw last year the budget you had for miscellaneous repairs was 39.5. Of that line item, we used approximately, let's just round it up and say $5,000. Right, so there was about 34,804 that was left unused for that line item. And moving forward into 2024, we're looking at 20,000 for that particular line item. Is there a reason why you're anticipating, 15, budgeting 15,000 higher than what we used for this current year? Is it because we've gotten new equipment? I'm not sure. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm trying to look back here to see exactly what we had. Chief, look, yep, there you go.
So we were anticipating, he said Chief Herney's mom is certified. She's getting ready to retire. We actually thought last year she was going to retire. She didn't. That's why we're in the savings yet. She could still retire this year.
Okay, so you're just kind of keeping it there as a backup in case it does. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for the fire budget?
Just one more, just
Yes.
the support equipment line item. What is that specifically? Towards the bottom,
Yep.
660.
So that would be things such as computer equipment. Our iPads on the trucks are 6 or 7 years old. They're starting to show some age issues. We have money budgeted for that. A few other tools such as hydroram, water rescue kits. Our water rescue gear is about 10 years old, and that's about the lifespan of them. So we budgeted to purchase 4 of those. Additional hose, portable radios, purchased 2 of them at $8,500 each. 5 pagers at $2,500 each. Replacement of other fire and rescue equipment, and as well as internet upgrades at the SOC.
Ms. Mealy?
Did you say the pagers cost $2,500 each? Why would that be?
I don't know, that's who we deal with, Motorola,
Okay,
and the price of the pagers have gone up, but only my opinion, the quality is going down.
Okay. And we need to have them. It's not like we could use a cell phone or something like that.
Absolutely. So, funny you say that. We do have cell phone capability. The problem is there is, like right now, we're having some issues with one of the softwares that we use. And we're not getting the initial call over the phone until much later. Once the trucks respond, then they get the page comes across. So it takes a little bit for this technology to catch up.
Got it. And the pagers are more immediate than the cell phones,
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
pagers are immediate.
Huh. All right. Because it just seems like, I mean, yeah, even the cell phone doesn't cost that much money.
Well, 20
Yeah.
years ago, when I was in Bucks, when I was down at Willow Grove, as with the Air Force, they were all of their phones received text messages. That's how they were being paged. So,
Yeah.
but we're not to that point yet with our CAD system here in the county and
Okay.
everything. So right now, we're still,
So it's related to a kind of a county-wide issue. It's not just a city issue, because it would seem to me like if we're spending that much money on equipment for things that we don't need, if we can fix it in the city, we should. But if it's a county issue, so you're saying it's a processing thing coming down from the 911 center.
right.
Okay, got it. All right. Because yeah, that it seems to me like they don't want you to have a pager if they want you to pay that much for it. So we should take the hit and get a cell phone. But okay, all right, sounds good. Thanks, Chief. The one, if you don't mind, if I have the floor for one more second, the one thing that I wanted to ask is it looks as though I certainly appreciate us trimming the budget to the point where it reflects the expenditures we're expecting in every department. But it does look as though basically we're lowering the budget in the fire department on almost every item from last year. And these aren't, by and large, they aren't numbers that we spent more than that in 2023, or there are justifications for why we're not going to spend as much, like the new hires. I guess I'm just asking, in your opinion, for instance, lowering sport equipment from 80,000 to 75. Now, granted, we only spent 73 this year, but we're not likely to somehow bounce over that number if we get it so close to the allocation. We don't think.
You said that was support equipment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see that we didn't spend 75,000 in sport equipment, even though we budgeted 80. I guess I'm just saying throughout your budget, I'm sort of seeing that we're trimming every number just slightly, and I'm okay with that. But I just didn't want to not leave you any wiggle room for an extra expenditure that might come along if you had a retirement and a new hire or something like that was unanticipated, and there's not enough money in the fire department budget to cover it. I was just trying to make sure that you weren't tightening things so much that was likely to happen.
Well, given the condition of the city, we were looking at that. That was an absolute consideration with it. I think there's a very, it's a minimal wiggle room that we have, but it's a wiggle room. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we absolutely would take more money for that safety net, but.
Well, I guess I'm just, it becomes a more complex operation if we're transferring money not within your department, but from another department into your department, which is why I'm sort of just trying to make sure that there's enough funding in the department to cover the needs of the department for the year. But if you think that, I mean, and we are always, this is not me saying that you should take more money, because everybody knows that we don't want that, but I'm just trying to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the department within the department's budget. So
Right.
you think that this will do?
For the most part, other than some of the slight changes that I explained early on.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Nobody ever hears me.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Not literally. What Chief is saying is that the budget that was presented to you had some errors
Yeah.
in terms of calculation, and he is requesting an additional
16,000.
16,000 be included when the budget is approved in December. He is requesting a little bit more in what line items?
Yeah. I was gonna say, Chief, if
Yeah,
you'd send us that information.
He stated
Oh,
it,
no,
but I
no,
don't think
no.
it was explicit
I
in
know,
what he said.
Send us.
I understood
we
the
can-
implication, and I'm
Okay.
sorry, I actually had already.
If you
I
send it
already
to
dropped
us,
that
we
ball and
can
moved on.
look
Okay.
through and.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be a lot easier if I could send it.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I think that would be much,
That would
and it
be
would be
easier
much
for me
easier on
too.
our end too, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you could send it, that would be good.
Absolutely.
But I guess just even looking at that, and I did hear you saying that, Chief. I'm just asking because it seems like everything is tightened down a little bit, but yes, if you send those documents, one of us will be sure to make the motion to shift the funds for
Thank you.
that.
Any other, Mr. Biter?
Just a curiosity question based upon the sale of the fire equipment. Tracy, where does that money go when we sell that equipment? Will it go to the general fund, or does that?
The equipment sale will go into the capital projects fund to replace capital purchases in the future. So you'll see that as part of the capital projects fund budget right now. It's included in there as sale of surplus property or something to that effect.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move to the codes department. Mr. Nar, welcome, sir, and good evening. And we will be on pages, give me a second here. 33, 34.
Good evening, President Yoder and members of council. What I present to you is a Bureau of Codes proposed budget of $893,893. We do have a 5.4% increase from last year's budget. 2.5% of that is coming from union contract salaries. And I can answer any questions.
Any questions on the codes budget? Gary, the one question I have, it's related to if you go to the salary detail. Codes is on page 66. So we have a retiree. There's
Yes, we do.
currently we have a level 5. And it looks like that person's leaving and we're picking up a couple level 1s.
Correct. What we currently have is a total of 7 staff, including myself. We have 1 part-timer. We do have 1 senior level that is retiring January 12th, and we are picking up 2 brand new code officers to give us a complement of 4.
Okay. Is the proposed complement that's in the budget satisfactory for what needs to happen in that office, and kind of some of the conversations I think a number of us have had with you in your role now of what I think we need that department to be?
We initially had talked with the mayor, and there is, in my opinion, I realistically think based off within the property, we have what we call our office manager. I'd like to see a part-time person. I know Molly and I talked about it, a part-time person brought in, because right now we have an office staff of 1 person. She's there answering the phones, doing everything with all the inspections and stuff like that. When she's out sick, when she takes vacation, there's no one that's going to basically be sitting in the office. So what I'd like to do is bring on that part-time salary. Wouldn't be benefits or anything like that. It'd be under $25,000, and have that person come in from 10 to 2, which would alleviate and allow us to obviously defer some of those phone calls that you are getting that sometimes they can't get a hold of the codes department or things of that nature. And that is because within our office, like I said, Robin's running both areas, and us also going out to see the officers because we are not in the same general location. But again, the main concern is going to be is when she's on vacation, like next week, she's on vacation. So I myself or somebody else is going to fill that position. As far as code officers, with the 2 new ones that we're proposing, the one that we definitely already brought on board with the 2 senior that we have, I feel that the 4 complement will give us to what we're looking for. I know the mayor and I have been working with some developments as far as aggressively going after the blighted properties, but I do believe the 4 complement will be fine. But I would like to see a part-time non-union person brought on to alleviate those issues that we may have within that office area.
So that'd be a additional part-time person that's not reflected in here, or
It
is
would
that?
be an additional that is not reflected in there.
Okay.
It's not reflected in there. I'd like to add that to that. But at this point in time, it's not.
Okay. I appreciate that, Gary. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for the codes budget? Mr. Pelisi and Mr. Allison.
How you doing, Mr. Nar?
Good. How about yourself?
We're all happy to be here. Again, I have a quick question for you. Under purchase of services, 3 items down, number 79100 contract services. I see in 2023, we budgeted 108,000. Of that, we used 70,845. So we had an unused balance, well, an estimated unused balance of 37,155. Now for 2024, you're asking for $115,000, which is approximately $44,000 higher than what's estimated to have been used by the end of this year for 2023. Can you explain a little bit
I
on that
certainly can.
request, please?
What that comes from is obviously when we budgeted that, we were planning on Old City development kicking off and utilizing that money. I basically added on to, not added on, but basically working within Barry ISET, helping them out at this point in time this year with a lot of the inspections and follow-ups and things of that nature. So next year, obviously, we definitely see Old City kicking off. We have the Wawa. The zoning department has identified 3 or 4 new big developments that will be coming into the city. So with the uptick of those type of inspections and stuff with the contract services, it is necessary to have them. The reason why we didn't have that is because obviously Old City didn't kick off to where we thought would be in this fiscal year.
Okay. So with Barry ISET, we're talking about the ADA inspections. Is that You mentioned about the additional need for Barry Isette regarding Old City, regarding Wawa, those things.
It's, and again, what we do is we look at the current developments that we have as far as what we're gonna need for the year. Old City was placed in there, Wawa was not. Wawa will happen obviously in 2024 as well as that. So those increases in just general inspections that they currently do, plan review, things of those nature is why we're looking for the increase and why we did not utilize that this past year. And again, the zoning department has identified 3 or 4 several developments coming into in addition to the Wawa and Old City within next year.
Okay. But per the contract with the ordinance resolution that we passed regarding the Barry Isette conducting the ADA, but also if the contractor so chooses to use Barry Isette, there is the pay, what the costs are associated with all of them.
There's no, Barry Isette did not request any additional contract services or an increase in what their contract was. That'll be standard what that they do. So it will be in line with what we currently have.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Thank you. No more questions.
I'm sorry, Mr. Allison had a question and then Miss Mealy.
Yeah. Gary, under the capital projects, under the narrative in the front there, the savings for one additional vehicle, $22,500. Is that there to accumulate money to purchase a new vehicle when
That is correct. What it is obviously on thanks to the city council. We did purchase 4 brand new vehicles last year under ARPA. So we do have 2 older vehicles. However, what we're going to do is once those obviously are expired, we're only going to maintain 1 new one versus 2 more additional ones. So that's why it's 2,500 instead of 5,000.
Okay,
And that's to allow that in the budget.
right, okay. That's what I suspected, and the zoning hearing board is in the narrative too as well. We're increasing in litigation. Is that been a trend moving up?
No, actually what it is due to the ongoing litigation for the housing development in the Newberry section that still has not been finalized, and we've been spending an exorbitant amount of money basically to get that kicked off so we can continue and obviously get the housing that the city does need.
So it's one particular site. It's not
Correct.
an
No.
increase in, okay,
Now, what we do is we look at when it comes to the zoning hearing board at the end of the year, actually I take a look at those items that had came before us as far as the variance. If there's like 4 or 5 of the same items, then that's something that we take a look at and say, should we amend the zoning ordinance to permit those if the zoning hearing board, for example, in detached garages, if they granted so many variances, then we may take a look at amending the ordinance to reduce that uptick of zoning hearing board. But at this point in time, I don't see any additional for next year as far as amending the zoning ordinance.
that's
I'm
all.
busy enough.
Thank you.
Miss Mealy.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the clean and seal and emergency demo line items. I noticed that we're increasing the budget for both of those, and increasing the budget for clean and seal, even though we didn't spend it all last year. What are our thoughts and plans there?
And a lot of it realistically comes to the mayor and I've had, are basically setting a program up now that we have the RDA enforceable and have this funding and the teeth set aside. We're going to be more aggressively going after those type of properties that are blighted. And that's where the clean and seal increases. We did do one emergency demo. There's probably about 2 or 3 that are still out there that we're finalizing legal aspects of it so that we should be taking them, such as there's one on Park Avenue right across from the YMCA. So, I mean, that's the whole purpose of increasing in that. So what it's going to do is hopefully cut down on the blight within the city based off the programs the mayor and I are working on.
And talk to me then, maybe this is a question for Derek, but about then the transition of those properties to the RDA, are we getting reimbursed by the RDA for clearing the properties? Do they transition after that?
Yeah, what will happen is the way that the system is set up, the Bureau of Codes has identified that they are a blighted property. We've exhausted all our avenues to basically get the people to fix them up. They're not fixing them up. So the Blighted Review Committee basically makes a recommendation to move them to the RDA. We do send a notice to the owners of these properties, letting them know that they have 30 days to appeal. If not, it goes to the RDA, where the RDA has the ability to purchase those and obviously get those back on the tax rolls, cleaning the blighted property up. So for example, if we spend $7,000 on a blighted property, RDA claims it, they basically turn it over to a contractor saying, hey, this $5,000 that we spent out is that plus an additional amount. So it will go back to the RDA.
Mhm. So the RDA will recoup the cost, and we will
Correct.
recoup the cost of the clean and seal or whatever it is, money that we spent on the property.
That is-
before it was transferred to the RDA.
In addition, what it'll also do is when we do this, we do place, for example, some of the clean and seal where we're out doing maybe mowing grass to some of these blighted properties. We basically will send that information to Norm Lubin, and at that point, they will put a lien on the property. That
Right.
property gets sold, then we'll get that money back from clean and seal as well.
Got it. And to what extent have we encountered, like, we can at some point just take the property, correct? To what extent are we running into issues where we are contacting the property owners, they are coming back and wanting to hang on to the property versus?
At this point in
people
time,
have just
at this
disappeared.
point in time, none of them. Like I said, I believe we have 9 properties that are in what we call the RDA list, where they have the ability to go in. Now that we have the
Mhm.
availability of funds to basically take those over. And that's where we stand with that.
Okay. And so far, we haven't had anybody turn up and say, no, that's my property and you're not doing
No,
whatever.
no.
Interesting.
Not at this time.
We've actually had a few that we were actually just talking about today in the RDA meeting. We didn't have a quorum, so it was just a conversation, but we've seen a few that have actually started to fix their property. They know that the
Okay.
RDA has teeth now.
Right.
So if Gary's had a few that actually are going to be coming off of the RDA's list, they don't want us to acquire, but the really, really blighted bad ones are not, they've not come back to say that
Yeah.
we want it. So it's
Okay.
not.
Yeah, just curious as to whether we wound up in that kind of rock and a hard place situation again, but
Right.
that's good. And it's good news if we
And-
have it. So,
And that's the whole process with, under the Bureau of Codes, we go through that legal process. It gets voted on through an agreement through the blighted property review, then it goes to RDA. So we have to have all our documentation. Once it goes to the RDA, then at that point they have the means. And now that they have the means, as the mayor was saying,
Right.
we've had several of those properties that were on the RDA have reached out and are realizing now that they have the ability for us to take those properties from them based off of the legal process, that they are now starting to fix those properties up. And we've also had some developers purchase those properties and have already flipped those, put them back into no longer blighted properties, into viable occupied residents.
Yeah, I mean,
excellent.
And we're going to continue. And like I said, we're continuing with the program aggressively this year to do so.
by the time it gets to RDA, there's usually been a number of letters that have gone to the property owner and that whole process. So it's not like the property owner is just blindsided that the RDA is going to come.
Oh, no, that wasn't what I was
Right. No,
implying.
I was just saying that
Yeah.
usually they don't come in at the 11th hour because generally the blighted property will give 6 months or, 9 months to fix it up and they don't do anything. And then they'll send them another one and say, we haven't heard from you. You have not made the improvements. It's going to transition to the RDA now. So, I mean, the two, Gary mentioned the one on Park Avenue. There's also one on Mosser where the fire was a few years back, where again, the property owner is just been AWOL. So, so those are the two we're looking at immediately. And then there's a couple others as Gary noted. So,
Good.
but no, we haven't had run into any, and he runs it by Austin and, we go through the whole legal process to make sure that, there was the one on the demo we did on First Ave or Second Ave, wherever that was.
Second Ave.
That was a very in-depth one. It was unique. A lot of these are anomalies where either the people are no longer around or
Right.
things of that way. So,
Yeah,
but it's working out well.
well, no, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, it's even better if people are actually beginning to take care of their properties because they understand that there's a possibility that they'll lose it. I mean, that's
Right.
really the most desirable outcome, I suppose.
yeah, and I think some folks were they knew the RDA didn't have any teeth. They didn't have any money. And so it's like, okay, you can't do anything to me. But
Right.
now we can. And, thankfully you all allocated that money. So we're seeing that it's working.
Good.
Hopefully it continues.
And then one last question, just as a kind of a number to watch moving forward. If we're getting money back in from liens that we've placed on properties as they're demolished and as they're handed off to a developer, where would it show up in the income?
It would come back into the general fund.
I think it's miscellaneous votes.
Yep.
Miscellaneous codes, got it. That's what I figured, but because that would be particularly exciting if we were able to recoup the investment that we were making in these properties from the sale of the properties. And I know that's not the idea, and that might not happen every time, but it would be great if we could. So, because then we could put it into working on other properties. Thanks.
Mrs. Katz.
And with the emergency demolition, is 30,000 enough? Because I know in the past, we've been told that they didn't have enough money in the budget to do some of the demos that, you looked at and thought it had to be done.
Some of that, again, what we've done is that's where the clean and seal budget was
Right.
increased. What an emergency demo is something that is really realistically property shifting, falling off, and that's what happened with the property on Second Ave. It was so deteriorated that basically the demolition company came in, the crane touched it, and it fell down immediately. So, I mean, and that's what the emergency funding is, and based off of what we're doing and with the RDA, the way the system is set up with the clean and seal, I think that'll suffice as far as within the budget.
That's good to hear
Yep.
because I know the money was a stop point in the past
Okay.
for some of the properties. So I'm happy to hear you say
Yeah,
that.
we took a look and restructured it.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mealy.
And just one.
Oh, you only said one more question.
I know. No, and I do need to be cut off, Gary, don't get me wrong. I had a follow-up question about I guess the part-time person in the office, in the codes department. Well, two questions. One, how much vacation does the person working in the office have? Or what's the general allocation? I apologize for not even knowing.
Based
but
off of her tenure, she has 5 weeks vacation.
5 weeks vacation annually plus sick leave, I'm assuming, yeah.
Correct.
And then I guess my concern is that if we have that volume of demand in the office, that we would need to have 1.5 people in the office. That to Adam's point, the 4 people that we have, it's a lot of office staff to only have 4 people out actually handling calls. Do you know what I'm saying? If we're getting that many calls in. So what are the nature of the calls that she's getting and or that she's not getting, that we think that we can meet that demand with the staff that we have on the ground?
Obviously, I probably get 40 complaints a week that call in, whether it be garbage, whether it be, high grass, whether it be, broken window out on these properties. So we're fielding all of those calls. They're added to that and the officers are actually out. So again, now that with this staff that we currently have, with the new officers coming aboard and the change of the regime that we have, I think those guys, well, I have it set up, they're more actively out in the areas, so that some will decrease, but we still get an absorbent amount of people that'll call that just, you have 2 bags of garbage out and they're going to call complaining about that, things of that nature. So we do get quite a bit of calls regarding that.
Okay, and the calls don't necessarily necessitate action, is what you're saying?
They do, because like I said, that's basically when a call comes in, I review it, and then then it's assigned to an officer. He or she goes out, looks at it. The following week, on staff meeting, we follow up and say, what happened with this call? Where's that complaint at? It's logged into the system. So again, it does take some of my time, and I just think that having that part-time person in there would take up some of that, because right now, from a zoning standpoint, now that we have gone down to just a 1 office person, I'm doing my own zoning packets, planning packets, development packets, and things of that nature. And I just think that would alleviate some of that. So
Got it.
that's the request for the part-time, in my opinion.
Okay, got it. And I guess follow up with that. I know that we're pretty heavily leveraged on software right now in the city, period, but this isn't something that, do we have an online portal for people to make complaints?
Get in touch.
Yeah,
And
right.
that's what-
So,
yep,
and
so-
do people utilize
Yes,
that?
they
Yes,
trust me.
right.
That's why I said I get
I
on the
figured.
average of at least 60 between get in touch
Right.
or just calling into the office and saying, hey, I have this complaint, an abandoned vehicle or this, it's just,
No, I mean, no, yeah. I mean, and then there are the calls that I get, and then there are the calls that all, I mean, no, there's lots of complaining in the city about people who are not taking care of their property.
correct. And like I
And then
said,
we
what,
call Gary.
Right.
and again, what
Exactly.
we're looking at and with the new officers that we have coming aboard and the training and the system that I've set in place with the new staff now that one is no longer with us and the one is going to retire. I think you should be seeing less this year of all of those type of complaints because they're going to be more aggressive out there walking some of the areas versus just basically being proactive is what we're trying to do versus being reactive under the Bureau of Codes.
Yeah. Well, that sounds excellent. And I'm not, that sounds like a great plan, Gary. So, and if you think you can do that with 4 and we can do with another office manager, then I guess we'll discuss that and see if we think we can make it happen. But thank you for that. That was a very in-depth response. I appreciate the detail.
Any other questions? Okay, Gary, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
All right. The computer froze, give me a second. So that wraps up the Department of Public Safety. Next on the agenda are our miscellaneous fund budgets. I think we can start with liquid fuels, Act 13. Scott, those are both yours. There's no other ones under you.
I'll do liquid fuels.
What's that?
I'll do the liquid fuels
Okay.
and
Like I say, if there's others out of order, we can hit those while you're up here as well. That's what I'm getting at.
what was the other one? City Hall funds?
City Hall,
I think so.
Sure.
Facilities.
facilities. Yeah, we can touch that too. Liquid fuels. We'll start there is on 58 and 59.
58. 56. 58 liquid fuels, 56 City Hall operating funds.
What do you want to do first? Your call.
Liquid fuels.
Liquid fuels? There you go.
Good evening, council. Projected revenue for 2024. 5% increase for the 2024 liquid fuel state. Liquid fuel funds in the state. Projected expenditures. We're up 5% as well. One of those big contributors there is the street materials, increase in paving, coal patch, crack sealing. Green Light Go, the match for that is 125,000. And we decreased in the equipment purchases 2024 to 78,000. My plan is right now I have one outstanding loan payment for one of my vehicles. I plan to purchase one more to bring me up to 78,000 per year for that. So any questions on liquid fuels?
Anybody have any questions on liquid fuels? Mr. Allison.
Yeah, I just have one on the the storm sewers and drain. Or, no, I'm sorry, not that. Yes, the decrease due to no projects for 2024. Is that something the municipal water authority? is
Yes,
taking over?
yep, that is correct. Yeah, I left a little bit in, there's a little bit in there for us to make, if we got to help out, jump in. But the majority of the work is the water authority. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thanks. That's all I got.
Any other questions on liquid fuels? Okay.
Actually.
Oh, Miss Neely. Almost.
Yes.
I tried, man. I tried. I'm just kidding.
What is our current liquid fuel surplus?
Say that, I didn't hear.
Oh, sorry. What is our current liquid fuel surplus?
What we're getting allocation each year?
Well, no, I mean, I can see what we're getting, what the revenue is. We're spending slightly more than that in the expenditures. We have a
Carryover?
surplus in liquid fuels. but
I'm trying to keep it right around the 400,000 to 500,000 carryover.
In the, okay,
Yep.
in the carryover.
Yep.
Got it. So we will be at probably closer to the 400,000 mark next year. I'm assuming because we're spending about $100,000. Yeah,
Yeah, it's somewhere in that range, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
got it. All right, that's all. Thanks. Guys.
Any other questions on liquid fuels? Okay, you wanted to go to City Hall operating next, Scott, correct?
Yeah, page 56. yeah.
Yep, 56 and 57. Or, yeah, 56, 57, excuse me. Go ahead.
City Hall operating funds, we are down 11% for 2024. Mainly, there's a few of them, we moved the police museum cleaning to the museum budget, took that out. There's really not much to say. We're operating it as we're open, for the heat and that stuff. Trying to keep it operational as right now, but it's down.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions on City Hall operating? Same kind of question for liquid fuels. Do we have what kind of a surplus do we have? Is there one in there outside of just what we see here? Yeah, yes. Yeah. I'm assuming there is some in there. We're in the process of taking 50, 60 out of there to fund for you for the audits for next year to try to get those knocked out. But I would be curious what's left in there. So what the cash carryover, yeah, would be helpful to know. Yep, thank you. Any other questions on City Hall operating? Chris, from an IT perspective, is there anything, out of the ordinary that we should be aware of? Because your office, your budget is under City Hall operating. Sure. If you like, sure.
Good evening, council. Mine has an increase of about a little less than 4% or $13,099. $2,163 is in salaries. 51,000 is for software, which is including operating system updates to all the servers, updating our Exchange server so we're back in compliance with it, and the Springbooks software, which is a new financial package coming on the first of the year. There is a decrease in the capital savings per year because the phone system we're getting doesn't require any upfront monies.
Any questions on IT specifically or anything else in City Hall operating? Because I think, Scott, you kind of hit the facility stuff too. So what's the difference between the two IT positions in the South and the I'm drawing a blank, sorry. The salary detail. There's you, but then there's a separate one from, I think, Treasury or something. What's the difference? Is that the police IT? Is that Sean?
No,
Or
he's
what's
paid
the other
through a
one?
grant.
Okay.
Oh, that
so
is, okay.
The
okay.
Treasury,
Didn't know that.
the one for 52,000, whatever it is, that's Sean, even though
Yes.
he's paid through a grant, that's where he shows up.
Right. We just felt like we needed to show it obviously somewhere.
Yep.
No.
I learned so.
Any other questions for Chris or for Scott on City Hall operating?
Thank you.
Cool. Act 13. Which is page 62, 63. Thanks again, Randy, for bailing me out. Welcome back, Heather.
Good evening. So with Act 13, You can see the revenues are at 57.3%. This is just an increase due to the average of the last 5 years. And then the interest income, also we're projecting to go up. The expenditures, increase in projects for the street resurfacing and rehab of $50,000. And then you have 2 grants that will need a match, one for the pump track at $224,159, and one for the comprehensive park plan, that would be $70,000.
Any questions on Act 13 from members of council? Okay. Let's go to capital projects.
Okay, that starts on page 51. So there is a 56% decrease that is largely in part due to the bulk transfer that was done into the capital projects fund for the savings. The pool repair fund was closed and 50,000 was transferred into the capital projects fund. The 400,000 that you see there, that is the proceeds that the city is expected possibly for the sale of the fire equipment, the Quint. And then that 400,000 would roll into the purchase for their Quint for 2024. The 20,000 in expenditures are an additional money that will be needed for purchases in 2024. So then if you go to pages 53 through 55, there is a breakout by department for the purchases that were budgeted for 2023, and then those that are expected for 2024. And then finally on pages 72 and 73, this is the 5-year projection where everything that is highlighted in green will be purchased in that corresponding year.
Any questions on the capital projects fund? The one question I would have, Derek, when are you bringing the ordinance forward to update when this is doing, when we're doing capital projects? Because technically this is violating our local law. It should have been done in May. So
We
when
can
are
do
we,
it.
first meeting in
Is that-
January?
Oh, we can do it then, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Husband,
please
okay,
bring it
yeah,
forward. I think
all right,
let's have the debate on whether it should be done here in May. There's arguments both ways. But let's get it done, get it fixed, get it codified one way or the other. And make sure we're in compliance with our own law. I know there were some administrative code changes you were looking at doing as well. Let's knock those out the meetings in January as well, please. I know that's been going on for about 6-8 months. And thank you. Any other questions on capital projects? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And then our last one is emergency and reserve funds. That here, 49 and 50, right?
Mhm.
Me, okay. Yeah, sure. I mean, you're welcome to. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We're spending $150,000 related to a lawsuit settlement that we openly talked about last year in 23. Yep. Yeah. In this current year. Yeah. And then our revenue is down because, we're not budgeting any transfers this year, according to the one pager. Yes.
From general fund to the emergency reserve fund, and if you recall, that's the difference between budget.
Budgeted revenue.
Yep.
And the actual at the end of the year, but it takes us a little while to get there. We anticipate it being about $900,000 in total that'll be transferred in there.
Gotcha. No, I was looking at the overall, overall it's less because there's less of an initial transfer compared, like, because we put like 3 some million budgeted, and then there was an additional
900,000
That
that
came-
will
that-
be,
that-
we're
that came-
projecting to
yeah.
be transferred,
Yeah.
correct?
So that initial $3.6 million that we put in last year in budget is not there. That's why overall it's lower, but
Right,
we're
correct.
projecting 900,000.
Correct, right. There, you're not projecting a one-time deposit into that. Again, it's based on the calculation annually.
Yeah. Any questions? Yeah, Ms. Mealy.
I think just more of a question for you. It's exciting that we're putting further funding into that. And it's exciting to see us holding on to an emergency and reserve fund. But what does this look like for us moving forward if we continue to have surpluses in this vein? And at some point, I mean, is there a number that we're hoping to hit in that fund? That's also, I think, perhaps a question for the administration.
Yeah, I know when we talked about this
The
last year,
recommendation would be
there was a
15 million,
recommend, there was a
correct?
recommended level that you gave us, or was in a document you shared with us.
Do you
I
have that
forget
number?
what
The
that
number I gave you
was.
Last week of the recommended
Um,
fund balance. 7.6 million that we wrote down last week or on Monday.
Yeah.
The recommended fund balance carryover that we talked about. I think it was 7.6 million. So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board says that it's between, I think it's 3 to 5 months you should have in reserve, right? So that was about, I think, 7.2 million
Yeah.
that you should have in reserve to carry over to the next year. So that would be part,
Right.
I would recommend that would be part of your reserve that you would carry forward. You also have your cash in your general fund that you're carrying
Right, yeah.
forward as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we're visualizing at least 3 million of that being held in reserve for a combination of levy / Capias run work, correct?
Yeah, so when we
But-
created this, I mean,
Right.
that was the idea. I mean, there's
Right.
these massive, crazy
Right.
projects that are unknown that we know are gonna cost more than a few $1,000,000, right?
Right.
So we have a mechanism to put money away and make it a little harder to pull out because of that, right?
Right.
But we haven't really talked about, I mean, Tracy can, I mean, this goes a little bit against the recommendation that she mentioned and probably the standards, but I mean, I would make the argument, given levy, Grappius Run, City Hall, who knows where that's gonna go, AG. I mean, it should be higher than that, in my opinion, but I'm one of 7 and really one of 8, 9, 10.
I guess I'm proposing that as a question that we should be considering.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, I mean, I would say,
Right.
I would say at least 10
Mhm.
or more, given all of those, but I think that's open for discussion. We should definitely have that. We're well on our way, which is good. So,
Right.
but nonetheless. A good point.
Got it. Well, I guess I'm really asking because we are in some ways constraining the use of this funding in a slightly more strenuous fashion than the regular general fund balance.
Yep.
And at some point, it won't make it operating on the exceptionally unlikely presumption that we wind up with 10 million bucks in this fund at some
Yep.
point. It may not make as much sense to constrain additional funding in this fashion. So
Sure.
I think it'd be a conversation we'd be wise to have, just so we know what our goals are there. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Good food for thought.
I mean, I had
Yep.
one,
Mr.
not
Mackey.
not related to what you were.
Sure.
Yeah, just a
Sure.
general question. Probably should have covered this on Monday, but
That's all right.
Mayor, sorry, Derek. Just something occurred to me. I was driving out of town the other day. Bowman Field naming.
Yep.
How's that gonna work?
So
Are we gonna renegotiate a new contract or is?
it's it's the same one. So Austin, I actually asked him that question with the merger we're talking about with
Yeah.
German Bank. Yeah, so an amendment will be coming to you all in December for the name update. But they are interested though, and there's a clause in the current contract where they can extend it in the middle of the agreement, and they're interested in having that conversation with us. So Austin actually already wrote the amendment to the resolution, so that'll be coming to y'all in December. And then we can have the conversation along with Journey Bank. They sent to Austin and myself a couple proposals that they would like to extend for an additional term for our consideration, for City Council's consideration. So Austin's reviewed them. We have some response to them, and we'll send that back, and then we'll get it back, and then it'll come to City Council. But as far as Journey Bank, the only thing we need to do at the moment is just update the name to reflect the name update in the resolution.
And who's on the, I should probably know this, who's on the hook for changing all those signs?
Journey Bank.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other, I guess, general comments or questions? Anybody, because we're at the end of item 1. Okay. Item 2, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be Thursday, December 7th, 2023, 7 p.m. right here, Trade and Transit 2. Upcoming meetings, aside from Thursday, December 7th, our last regularly scheduled meeting of December is the 14th, also at 7 p.m. a week after. So I would also just wish everybody here, administration, members of the public, a healthy, happy, fruitful Thanksgiving. The holiday season is here. Be safe, enjoy time with family and friends, however you celebrate. So, okay. Motion and a second for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on December 7th.